In August, members of the Green Party of England and Wales will vote on a number of available positions within the party, including a new leadership team. I recently sat down with Chas Warlow to chat about his campaign for the deputy leadership position. This was our conversation. Hi, so I am now delighted to say that I'm joined by Green Party Deputy Leadership hopeful, Chas Warlow, who is joining me today for an interview about his upcoming candidacy for the role. How are you, Chas? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, absolutely, and very excited about the whole campaign and about this interview. So, thumbs up.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving the time for Turn Left today. We do really appreciate it. We've been saying we're delighted that we've been able to get all nine of you together to come and talk to us and give up your time during a period that I appreciate is quite a busy one for you. So thank you so much there for your time. Before we delve into Green Party stuff and before we delve into sort of some of the meatier questions, just tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, well, I've been a member of the Green Party for about 11 years, and I've been a local councillor in Richmond, Richmond upon Thames in southwest London for the last 3 years. Got elected in 2022. There are five Green councillors on Richmond Council. Where we are the opposition. We are very much a minority, though. There's five Greens and 49 Liberal Democrats. But it's an interesting position to be in because usually Greens are kind of up against either Labour, usually in London, or Conservatives out in more rural areas. But we're in a bit of a Liberal Democrat stronghold. So, yeah, I've been involved in local politics for about a decade. And before that, I was very involved in local community grassroots projects, environmental projects like community energy. So I was involved in a hydropower project, which we tried to get built on the Thames on Teddington Weir, which is quite close. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Very, very unfortunately. But I've also been interested and worked in energy efficiency, so giving advice to householders and organisations about how to help reduce their carbon emissions from domestic energy use or commercial energy use as well. And then I worked for a while in renewables, so EV charging infrastructure, working for a couple of companies, trying to get that sort of boosted across the country and getting as much infrastructure in the ground as possible to help that transition away from fossil fuels again. So it's kind of that's a continuing theme.
Brilliant. And just talk to me a little bit about some of the successes that you've had on the council.
I mean, one of the big things that we did, we brought a debate because that's something you can do as an opposition. You can bring a priority opposition business debate. So we brought a debate on housing, and it was really all about trying to get more affordable housing in the borough because this is a well-off borough, relatively speaking. But there's very so that makes it even harder for people in the area, especially younger people, to get a foothold. Well, just to afford anywhere to live. And so we really pushed the council to take more action on that. And as a result, they have become themselves a social housing provider because they weren't previously. They had basically hived off all of their social housing, all of the council housing. What used to be council housing is now operated and managed by and owned by housing associations. So, we really pushed for that and also to crack down on bad landlords and help tenants and then other things that we've done. We've really pushed on recycling rates and we've highlighted the fact that all of our domestic waste gets sent off to incineration or yeah, basically all of it gets sent to incineration, and that although that is energy from waste, there is that kind of seemingly positive aspect to it. Of course, it doesn't help in the general effort to reduce domestic waste. So we've really pushed on that, and generally we've been trying to hold the Liberal Democrats to their promises, especially obviously on climate and nature, but not exclusively on that. Like we've made sure that they are changing their the way that they deal with council tax. Um, so that people who can't afford to pay any council tax are not ending up in court or being served summons or getting, money taken away from their benefits, which was what was happening, in order to pay their council tax, which they can't afford to pay, which they shouldn't be paying in the first place. So, things like that.
Brilliant. So, cards on the table. I am a member of the Green Party. I haven't
Right.
decided yet
Well
how I'm
done.
going to vote. Thank you. Yeah, join the Green Party if you're watching.
Well, the Green Party.
And if you join before the 31st of the month, you can vote in the upcoming elections. But yeah, I am a member of the Green Party, and I genuinely haven't yet decided how I'm going to vote in the deputy leadership elections. So, no pressure, but tell me why I should vote for you.
Um, I think, quite apart from the fact that for a long period of my life now, I have been totally committed to green values in the way that I live. So, for instance, I've put solar panels on the roof of the last couple of houses that I lived in, including this one that I'm in now. I have constantly kind of changed what we do as a family to. Obviously, with the consensus of the rest of the members of the family, I'm not some kind
Of
of
course.
dictator. Obviously,
You will recycle.
yeah, you will exactly. So we've moved. Well, we're vegetarians. We don't have a car anymore. We cycle everywhere. We recycle everything that we can do. We buy organic. All of those kind of very nice middle class, I'm sure, ways of being green. But I've been doing that for a long time. Um, and then I've been involved in, as I said, projects in the community that have given me a practical insight into how you might be able to transition, say, an energy system, or at least parts of it. And then I think, generally speaking, I have what I think is a pretty balanced viewpoint, a balanced perspective. And so, what I'm putting myself forward to be is the candidate who can hold together the various parts of the party. Like you mentioned before we even started the interview, you talked about, well, you don't want to see the party split up into little factions like the Labour Party seems to be. And I think if there's a danger of that, then I believe that I can be the kind of person who can hold people together, have reasonable discussions. I'm someone who believes in that. I believe in
And
having.
what experience have you got of sort of bringing sort of two sides together in that way? Is that something that you've had to do in the council, or
Well, I've had to do that, or at least I've seen how it doesn't work, and I've thought about, well, yeah, that we could have done that differently. Certainly in council, that we walk a fairly tight, narrow line between being, the opposition, but also collaborating where we think it's the right thing to do. So we do maintain a certain openness while still also, having our own beliefs and convictions and pushing our own agenda. So I've got that kind of experience of just walking that quite narrow line of being able to see both sides of a question and still get a result from building consensus.
yeah? Speaking of building consensus and sort of walking narrow lines in that sense, the way that the elections work, for anyone that doesn't know, and if you've been watching all of the interviews that we're doing, you'll have heard me say this a million times. So feel free to skip forward 10 seconds. But the way that it works is that we have three leadership positions available. So there's either going to be one leader and two deputies, or two co-leaders and one deputy. Um, Obviously, Zach Polanski is standing on the single ticket, and Ellie Chowns and Adrian Ramsey is standing on the joint ticket. If it's the former, if Zach Polanski is elected as a single leader and you are elected into the deputy leadership position, having to co-lead that role alongside somebody else, how will you ensure that you work with them successfully despite any ideological or sort of policy or any other differences that you may have?
Well, we're all in the same party, and that's something that I really firmly believe. So we start from a position of having a very common ground. So it's not like bringing two completely different opposing views together. We already have that commonality. So building a consensual, not consensual view, but coming to an agreement with someone else is something that I believe that I'd be able to manage to do, and I hope the other if it turned out to be me and someone else, I hope that the other person would be willing and able to do that too.
Hmm. Fantastic. And I suppose it's one of those, if you can work with the Lib Dems when necessary, you can definitely work with other members of your own
Well,
party.
that's not a great way of putting it because Lib Dems are pretty well aligned with us, so
Yeah.
we'd be, looking at somebody completely different. But yeah,
Well,
yeah,
very true.
point.
You get the sentiment I'm going for, though.
Yeah.
Back in April, current co-leader Adrian Ramsey took to Twitter to say that, like the BNP and UKIP, Reform UK will disappear once voters realise what they really stand for. Do you agree with him?
Well, they haven't gone away yet, and they got that massively big result for them. Although I don't believe they have as many councillors as a Green Party, like just in pure number yet. But yeah, of course, they had a massive win, and mainly, I believe, it's at the expense of the Tory Party. If you look at the numbers, but we can't really say that for sure. Um, so they haven't gone away, and they obviously have, they've got a message that has resonated with people. I don't think they have a set of policies that is coherent. In fact, I don't even know what their policies are, to be honest. I just know that they are a reactionary force in politics.
Hmm. Do you think they're a threat that we need to sort of try and tackle head on, or do you think that we can just sort of let them do their own thing and not really worry about them too much as long as we're focused on our own campaigns?
No, no, I think we have to face them head on. We do have to give answers that are the positive version. They are a reactionary force. They are looking at the negative sides of pretty much everything, and trying to roll back a lot of progressive gains. We need to say this is the positive vision. This is what having, say, a net zero economy looks like. It provides jobs, it provides local benefits. We're talking about the well-being of communities and individuals, and they're talking about basically uh, what seems to be just what is wrong with a whole host of different aspects, from migration to net zero, and they're just their anger at all of those aspects. But we need to be really calm but firm and say, we're the adults in the room, actually. You can throw the toys out the pram if you like, but we can see a vision of the future that is just so much better. Well, you're not even providing a vision of the future. They're not.
And on the subject of other parties, there's lots of rumours swirling around at the moment about the potential creation of a new party on the left, led by Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. And while they've sort of said the odd thing about it, there's nothing formal yet. Despite that, recent polling shows that this, as of yet, unrealised party is polling at around about 15%, the same as the Labour Party is currently. And the same polls also show that as a result of this, the Greens are losing not a huge amount, but certainly a significant amount
Yeah.
of their vote share. What do you think it says about the Green Party at the moment, and maybe the way it operates or the comms, that so many people who want to find
Mhm.
a party on the left to get behind would rather go out and show support for a potential party that doesn't yet exist, than actually throw the support behind a party on the left that is already here in the Greens?
Yeah, well, obviously, we're not getting our message across, are we? We're not reaching well enough into the mainstream at all to show people that we are that party. In fact, why on earth would you need to set up a new party to say what? I mean, I don't know what their policy basis is, but I would imagine that there would be lots of crossover between a party with Jeremy Corbyn.
So, if elected into the deputy seat, then how would you tackle that? How would you reach those people and make that message clear?
Um, that is probably the toughest question that you're going to ask anybody, because I don't have a ready-made answer for it. I mean, the obvious answer is to push all of whatever levers we have in the media, and talk to as get onto as many podcasts and and any kind of programs and any media that will have us to talk about what we stand for and make sure that people are aware that it's not just about recycling. I mean, yes, obviously we're interested in climate, nature, and all of the sort of elements of that part of our agenda, but we are also a radical, progressive. Basically, we are a left-wing party, so that we already exist. We have elected members, not just members of parliament, but many, many councillors. So it is really disappointing to see that we're in this position where, as you said, a party that doesn't even exist can support, of, and they are taking our potential members and voters.
Mhm.
Right.
If they do develop as it looks as though they will, would you be willing to sit down the table and engage in conversation with them about maybe possible future alliances or working together in order to be successful at the next election, or would you rather people support us and we sort of stick to our
I
own
mean,
campaigns?
in general, I'm very willing to talk to people about potential alliance or whatever it might be. I mean, I don't know about this particular case because, as you say, the party's not really.
It's difficult because we don't even know what they're about. We've not got any policy ideas. Like you say, I think it's safe to assume that it will certainly be a socialist platform. But I imagine many of the things that they'll want to do will be very similar to our own manifesto.
I mean, if they actually form and then last long enough to be a valid force, because there was another party that fought, I can't remember what it was, Clive Lewis and somebody else.
Is that Change UK?
Yeah, I think.
This was yeah. Was this Luciana Berger and Anna Soubry and
Yeah.
yeah.
It didn't last very long. So I don't know. I think you have to give it a little bit of time to see what happens. But it would be disruptive, and it's a bit like those parties that are not reform but are kind of offshoots of reform. Rupert Lowe's got a party, doesn't he? And Habib has started a party, and they're all trying to.
Yeah, they're not polling at 15% though. You
Okay,
know,
well, that's a fair point too. But I was kind of seeing it a bit like fragmentation of the left, just like they've fragmented on the right a little bit. But you're right; they're not really serious contenders.
yeah. But you would be willing to sit down
Oh
with them
yeah,
if,
sure.
if it came to
I'd
it.
be willing, in principle, give it a bit of time and see how they actually develop, and then say, okay, well, if there is a crossover here, it seems really stupid for us to be struggling against each other. That's the thing about alliances. You have to be really careful where you have that alliance. If
Yeah,
it's on a
that's true.
constituency basis, what is the advantage for the Green Party?
No, very true. I was just going to say, I know that Zach and Adrian have both said in so many words that they would be happy to engage in any conversations, certainly at least, with any new party that would form. Neon Blooper on Twitter has asked, what do you think? What do you guys think of the Liberal Democrats? I know they have some different policies, but a majority are left wing in a way. And I was wondering what you thought. And then they've put also, would you consider running for Parliament if elected, or even if you're unsuccessful in being elected in this role?
I did run for Parliament last year in my local constituency, which is called Richmond Park, and that is, like I said, it's a very much a Liberal Democrat stronghold here. So I did, obviously I didn't win, but I would consider doing it again. I'm not sure if this is again, this is such a Lib Dem stronghold. It's almost impossible to make any inroads here. So I don't know. Would I stand somewhere else? I haven't really given it a vast amount of thought, to be honest. What do I think about the Lib Dems? Well, that's interesting because I've got this experience of working alongside them, and they just span quite a wide spectrum, at least locally. So you've got some people who are definitely very progressive and could be, and really kind of should be, in a Green Party,
Yeah,
but
we'll get them eventually.
hopefully. But I don't know. You see, that's the thing about being in this particular part of the world because they don't really have an incentive to move to jump ship. But then you do have some people who were conservatives. I suppose they're more like soft Tories who joined the Lib Dems, and most of them seem to have joined post Brexit once they realised that they just didn't agree at all with conservative standpoints. So then they joined the Lib Dems. So the Lib Dems have this very, very broad church, and so that's, I think, what makes it difficult for them to stand out in policy terms as, this is what we stand for, and this is what we would do if we were in government, because they've got, kind of both ends of the spectrum pulling internally. That's the way I see it, anyway. Yeah,
No,
so
it's interesting. I think it's an interesting dynamic, like you say, when you're having to work alongside them as well. You get to see sort of different sides to some of them. I just want to move on just for time.
sure.
Alex Feist Bryce has said on also on Twitter, the Green Party's policy is very supportive of trans rights, but that hasn't resulted in all senior party representatives being vocal in their support. Could you explain your position and how you would use your voice as deputy leader to advocate for the rights of trans people?
Yeah, my position is completely in line with Green Party policy, supportive of trans rights. Completely accepting that people have a right to self-identify, and and that we need to avoid discrimination in all parts of society. So yeah, I mean, I have no problem in saying that publicly. What I would do, I guess, I would sort of continue to make that general proposal to the public that it's okay. You don't have to worry about trans people. Essentially, I think that's what there's a lot of this kind of fear around trans people, and you say, look, it's okay. They're just people, all right? Just let's try to be normal about this, and be as open about it as possible and supportive in in whatever situation I'm in.
Another question we've got from Alexander Louis Salons, also on Twitter. The Green Party has failed to update our constitution substantially over the past 15 years. In that time, we've gone from a party of 1,000 to 65,000 and growing. How will you use your position to make the Green Party fit for the future?
That's a really good question, because I haven't thought of this before. So I would need to look at that, and then if I was elected as deputy leader, obviously I would talk to GPEX and the leadership, and we would have to address that issue. I mean, it could come to a conference, surely, or should come to a conference as well. I'm not sure exactly how to address it, like amendments to the constitution, through motions or through a single kind of motion. I don't know, but there must be a way of doing it.
Do you agree with the sort of the sentiment that, given the size of the party now compared to when sort of some of the constitutional elements were first sort of put into practice, that it probably is time to sort of maybe go back and readdress some of those?
Well, there's no harm in reviewing it, but without having the constitution in front of me, I'm not sure which elements are exactly being referred to. But I'm sure there's a lot of truth in what the question is saying. It makes sense, yeah, given that that's the premise of the question. Yeah, so I have no particular problem in looking at it again.
One of the questions that has been submitted from TikTok is from Leo. And Leo's asked, in an age where online communication is so integral, what is your aim for social media campaigns and how would you achieve them? So, I mean, you've said already that, TikTok's not a platform that you use. So what platforms do you use and how would you look at using social media? Is it something you've given any thought to?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've given a lot of thought to it, um, but I hadn't decided whether or not to use TikTok. I'm using Instagram and Facebook at the moment, and Blue Sky. So those are the three platforms. But I mean, essentially, it's about reach, isn't it? You need to have as many people following you as possible, and following lots of people and getting as many views of content.
If it helps, Nigel Farage is on TikTok and he's got more followers himself than every MP in Parliament put together.
Right. There you go. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Hmm. That's food for thought.
mhm.
I'm showing my age as well. Not I'm not with it.
I've got a question from Els, and I've not read it all the way through, so bear with me. I'd like to know what the candidates are going to do to promote and build solar farms, wind farms, and other large sustainable energy projects that green NIMBYs don't like. I'm a green member, and I'm fed up with hearing other green members say that we need to put solar panels on buildings, not farmland, which would be about 1,000 times more expensive and make maintenance a nightmare. What's your response to that one?
I'm not. I don't necessarily agree that maintenance is a nightmare on roofs, but I understand the thrust of the question. Yeah, I do see that you've got to. Well, you have to talk to people who are opposing projects, large scale projects. You have to be able to explain what you're doing and offer something that will make them feel that it's worth it. So obviously, the bigger picture is worth it. We're bringing down our own emissions and we're generating our own electricity, becoming more electricity independent, energy independent. But you also have to be able to say, well, what are your concerns? It's like, well, if you don't want tons and tons of pylons and you prefer, or you think it'd be better to have underground cabling, then our why couldn't a green government agree to that? That is a question of budget and cost rather than ideological position. So I think it's a mixture of things. Yes, sometimes you have to just say, okay, well, we think this is for the common good, and you may disagree with it, but we're going to go ahead with it anyway. But ideally, we should be offering benefit to local communities, not just thinking about the great infrastructure projects that we need to build, because that is a disconnect between government and local communities, and that is an old story that
Mm.
we don't want to repeat.
Yeah, I mean, sort of on that theme, Danica Priest on Twitter has asked, how will you stand up to the property developers and YIMBY lobby and protect our green spaces and biodiversity?
Well, there you go. You see, you've got the two things in there, and now it's bringing those two things together and saying what I've just said. Essentially, that there is going to be a way of bringing benefits and showing benefits and making a project work on a local level as well as on a national level. That's the challenge for any green politician, whether they're local or national or regional. So that's the approach to take. It's more time consuming to talk to local communities and get their support, but that is the way that we should be approaching these kind of questions. They're tough questions. There's no doubt about it. And
Yeah, I imagine it's something that you've come across with working on the council as well, certainly with like planning applications and developments and things.
yeah, for sure. And then before that, when I was working on the local community energy project that I mentioned earlier, and that was definitely something that we knew what the benefit would be for the local community, but there was a landowner, which actually was it, it was Shell owned the property, and they had their own reasons to oppose it, and that was extremely difficult to deal with. But we're not really talking about that case here. We're talking about
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
around.
I think there is a wider conversation, isn't there, about there's a preconceived idea about the Greens
Mm,
that we're all a bunch of NIMBYs, but then on the flip side of that, we do need to protect our green spaces and the biodiversity and our wildlife.
mm.
Rachel Reeves has turned it into a bats and newts argument, um, but how do we sort of bridge that gap? Because I think there's validity in both sides of the arguments, isn't there? We do
Yeah,
need to protect our green spaces, but also we do need investment in
yeah.
infrastructure. We could do with more railways, for example, because more public transport is great because it's a greener form of transport, gets people off the roads. But that involves building railways, which often involves going through greenbelt land or destroying wildlife. So how do we sort of
Mm.
piece the two things together?
Yeah, I think I just need to reiterate it. There is a way of doing this. I think to see the two things in opposition, almost kind of, oh well, they're just banging together without any resolution. I think you've got to be able to just pull them apart a little bit and then say, well, okay, well, how are we going to get the local communities to get some benefit from this, whether or not it's just a case of, say, having a local grid. so that you have a direct benefit for people in the local area, so that their bills are much cheaper. That could be one way of doing it, or whether or not you're doing some sort of biodiversity kind of benefit, to compensate for any loss of biodiversity in that particular local area. I'm just throwing out ideas. These are not necessarily what I would do. This is just finding a way to bridge that gap between what is a really valid conflict between two particular perspectives. But you've got to find the way, because that's absolutely essential as we move forward. We can't afford not to find answers to these big questions. So I would just say there's an answer there. We'll find it.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Mm.
You're obviously in Richmond upon Thames, and basically all of our MPs are sort of certainly towards the south, if not in the south. We've often got a history of having target seats in the south only. If elected, what will you do to promote more northern voices within the Green Party?
Well, I would like to go and visit lots of local parties in the north, well across the whole country. But let's look at the north of England as well at first, because there's no doubt that there's a much bigger social and economic problem to be looked at in that part of the country, and everything has failed in the past. And we know what the gulf is between the southeast and basically the rest of the country, more or less. So there's obviously lots of work to be done, and lots of people who would welcome a green vision for the future in those parts of the country. And there's already good, I know one of my brothers lives in York, and I know there's a good presence of Greens there, and Sheffield as well. I mean, it's not like there's no Greens anywhere in the north of England, and there's really good reasons to have target seats
Yeah.
there.
And is that something you would commit to? I appreciate that, conversations are already ongoing about what the target seats are going to be.
Yeah.
But is that something that you would commit to if you are elected, to try and push for, at least some target seats in the north of England?
Yeah, I think it's totally essential. Yeah, I
Yeah.
will commit to doing that. Yeah, that's the only
Thank you.
reason not to.
We've also got upcoming Senate elections in Wales fairly soon now.
Mm.
Sam Andretti, again on TikTok, what's your stance on Welsh independence?
Oh, what a question! Oh, brilliant. God, honestly, I'm not committed either way at the moment. I can see the arguments, but at the same time, it doesn't feel quite the same as the Scottish independence um, lobby, because there you had a lot of support, obvious overt support amongst Scottish people, and you had a Scottish National Party, well, in power at the time when they called the referendum. Whereas in Wales, that's not the case. So I would need to think some more about that. I'm not. Yeah, like I said, I'm kind of on the fence there. I haven't decided yet.
No, that's cool. Would you be willing to sort of respect the decision of the Welsh if they decided they wanted a referendum? Is that something you would support? And would you sort of support them either way, or do you feel you'd be more inclined to look at the details and then potentially pick a side?
I think I'd have to talk to a lot of Welsh Green Party members first about that. I haven't really done that in the past. Well, I have met a few, but I haven't had a chance to look at that. Although I was born in Wales, as it happens.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, maybe it's something you could add if you get elected. You could maybe visit Wales. In some of your earlier visits as well as coming to the north, of
yeah,
course.
of course. Yeah.
I'll say that as a northerner. That's important. We're going to have to wrap up shortly just because of time. But just before we do, one final question. I appreciate that Green Party policy is set by the membership,
Hmm.
as it should be. Um, but if you could change any Green Party policy, whether it be get rid of one, whether it be introduce something new, or whether it be tweak an existing policy, what would it
Hmm.
be and why?
Yeah, I have been asked this already in another interview, and I think it's not so much change our policy as just deepen it on um, generative AI and, and social media and what sort of media. Uh, I guess the media itself is a big issue, and control over the media and big tech, and AI and social media. I would want to look at that to find better ways to protect the vulnerable people who are most affected in a negative way by the kind of where would you put it? Just sort of horribly harmful um, elements of that part of our society. So I think that when it comes to artistic copyright, I think there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that we should be, well, campaigning, on behalf of the creative industry, on for their rights. So what you said about using any kind of creatively generated material by actual real people is really really important that we maintain that. If there is any way of using generative AI that speeds up a very routine piece of work, I mean, I don't know how we can divide between these two things. I would prefer that we avoid uh, heavy use, certainly, of AI and keep it to the bare minimum. I could make that kind of commitment because I'm not totally sure, as you just said, I'm not really sure, first, whether or not we're doing it anyway, and secondly, whether or not it is actually applicable to use for certain routine things which just genuinely save time. Okay, that might be a good use of Green Party time, but on the other hand, there's this massive other part of the whole equation which is totally to be fought. I think that that campaign has to be really really clear.
It's like everything else, I suppose, isn't it? It's finding the balance between,
Yeah.
you know, between both.
Mm.
Well, Charles, thank you so much for your time. We are going to have to call it there just because of time. I'm sure we could talk for another hour. Just before you go, though, if anyone's watching this and they want to know more about you, they want to know more about your campaign or sort of what you're offering in this election, where do people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, just my name, and also Instagram. And they can find me on, well, if they want to know more about me as a councillor, they can find on Richmond Twickenham Green Party, which is rtgp.org.uk. So they can get a bit of background there. But I'm posting stuff fairly regularly on social media, and you've now made me really know that I have to do more of that. So I will be doing a lot more in the coming weeks.
Fantastic. Well, Charles, thank you so much for joining us here at Turn Left. We really do appreciate you giving up your time, and all the best with the campaign and break a leg.
Thank you very much for taking your time as well and doing the interview.
Not a problem. No, we do really appreciate it. Thanks again. We'll
Okay.
see you again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.